I think what's been on America's mind right now is kind of what's going on in Ferguson. And it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Yes.
But to a lot of people, what it means is police overreach. That things that police officers do might be interpreted entirely different if the average person did them.
Yes.
Which means that a piece of metal hanging from your chest somehow makes you different. And I don't think most of us really believe that. But apparently there's now been a list of guidelines that have been brought out by a Homeland Security professor.
Yeah, a guy that was for 17 years a police officer with the LAPD. And according to the Washington Post, he is a professor of Homeland Security at Colorado Tech University.
I would have never guessed there was such a thing.
Yeah, I've never heard of a professor of Homeland Security, but not really sure why the Washington Post would lie about the guy's credentials.
I don't think they would.
Especially when you're already listing, 17-year police officer. So he has written a fairly lengthy article on the Washington Post website, and I'm going to post the link to the full article to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/freetalklive. But there's a very important part that's right in the middle, to where he says, here's what you can do to avoid getting killed, beaten, tased, etc. by the police. Says,
well, I'd like to avoid being those things.
Yes. I think most people would. There is the rare exception of people that, want to go out, suicide by cop is what they call it. But, the average person wants to avoid those. So let's just jump in to the meat of the article here. He says, even though it might sound harsh and impolitic, here's the bottom line. If you don't want to get shot, tased, pepper sprayed, struck with a baton, or thrown to the ground, just do what I tell you. Don't argue with me. Don't call me names. Don't tell me that I can't stop you. Don't say I'm a racist pig. Don't threaten that you'll sue me and take away my badge. Don't scream at me that you pay my salary, and don't even think of aggressively walking towards me. Most field stops are completed in just a few minutes. How difficult is it to cooperate for that long?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, this guy thinks that that we should be cooperating with him. He thinks that the public serves him, not vice versa.
Right.
Now, I would agree with him. I think that anybody who believes that police are, in fact, public servants doesn't live in the same country I do with the same news stories I read. But that's the story we're told. It's like 1984, where the
chocolate ration is increasing from 20 grams to 15 grams.
Yay! Right, it's like that. And look, I've never had these problems before. I've never had them. I've never had a police officer overstep their boundaries with me.
The only time I've ever had a gun pointed at me, it was being held by a police officer.
That's fine.
They responded to the wrong house and thought that I had robbed myself.
Well, didn't you feel safer when you were done?
No.
Okay.
No, I did not.
So I guess let me read off the list of what I'm supposed to do in dealing with a police officer again.
Okay, so here's things you don't do. Don't argue. Don't call him names. Don't tell him that he can't stop you. Don't call him a racist pig. Don't threaten to sue to take away his badge. Don't scream that you pay his salary. And don't even think of aggressively walking towards him. And think was in the italicized.
Yeah.
So basically, don't even think about doing anything that he could interpret as being possibly aggressive.
I guess I agree with what he's saying here. I think that those are good systems for dealing with police, but not because I believe that police are professional individuals that are qualified to do their jobs. Quite the opposite. I think that it's quite possible that you can get shot in dealing with them, and that if you do, that whatever they say is going to be the story that everybody goes with.
Yes.
Because in this country, not in this country, in this day and age, 2014, when everybody's got a camera on their cell phone, and it's completely within the realm of possibility that police could have body-mounted, car-mounted cameras that upload audio and video directly to the internet. This could be done in the vast majority of the United States. And then we would have audio and visuals of what actually occurred instead of having to believe somebody who was a C+ student and, ended up being a police officer. I'm not saying that doesn't mean that they're entirely qualified. Everybody's got to have a job, but I shouldn't have to believe you. Not today.
There's more. He says, I know it's scary for people to be stopped by cops. I also understand the anger and frustration if people believe they have been stopped unjustly or without reason. I am aware that corrupt and bully cops exist. When it comes to police misconduct...
Why do corrupt and bully cops exist if police are such paladins of justice? Why don't they go and get them? Because every time I see a police beating video, I see the police, plural, beating people. I don't see one cop pulling the other cops off and saying, hey, what are you guys doing? This is completely uncalled for. As a matter of fact, I've never seen that. There's been two stories that have come out since I've been doing this show for 12 years now that I've seen, where one police officer reported a couple of police officers afterwards.
And she got fired.
She got fired, and a bad recommendation. And another one where a Florida FHP pulled over I think it was a Broward County or Dade County cop that was going 120 miles an hour in his squad car, had been doing the same thing for 3 months, and he didn't expect to be pulled over.
And then after that incident, the entire police department of the cop that got pulled over was then targeting the officer that stopped the other officer that was speeding.
Yep, they're hassling her online. In both cases, these were women, interestingly. And in both cases, they got a lot of flack. Now, that says to me that if you are a good cop, that you realize relatively quickly that this is a club. Yes. And that if you violate the rules of conduct of the club,
they will beat you with the club.
You had better have another line of work coming up soon, and you ought to move because things ain't going to be so great for you.
So he says, when it comes to police misconduct, I side with the ACLU. Having worked as an internal affairs investigator, I know that some officers engage in unprofessional and arrogant behavior. Sometimes they behave like criminals themselves. I also believe that every cop should use a body camera to record interactions with the community at all times.
Why, if this college professor says that that's so, why don't they? Rialto, California, put body cameras on their cops. These don't even upload directly to the internet, which is what I'm demanding right now. But just mounted cams dropped uses of force by 66%. And complaints against police officers for brutality by 80%. This is a win-win for everybody.
The reason they don't, and I've been to legislative committee hearings here in New Hampshire where this was discussed, they don't because of the cost, and they claim, well, based on this rule, we would have to have it on while talking to somebody that just got raped, and that would not be fair to them.
When this author said that... sometimes cops act like criminals. This is the 17-year police veteran.
Yes.
And Homeland Security professor is the other title, and I'm not sure what that means.
At Colorado Tech University.
That's a pretty telling statement. Sometimes the police act like criminals. Not that sometimes the police are criminals, but sometimes they act like criminals because they're not actually criminals. They could never really be that, right?
Right,
like
because
they're different.
They've got the little badge. So, therefore, it's not a crime when they do it. So, we started this earlier in the evening, and there's a 17-year veteran from the LAPD, and he has written a letter of things not to do to make sure that you wind up not getting killed by a police officer. He writes, And you don't have to submit to an illegal stop or search. You can refuse consent to search your car or your home if there's no warrant, though a pat-down is still allowed if there's cause for suspicion. Always ask the officer whether you are under detention or free to leave.
You know, this is something I find very interesting. I agree with these statements, is that a police officer is allowed to do a Terry pat to find out whether you have weapons.
Yes.
Then presumably they can then take the weapons from you. They can take the weapons from you so that you are therefore unarmed before them. Why can I not unarm a police officer before they deal with me? Why is it that I have to deal with a police officer that has a weapon on them, but they don't have to deal with me when I have a weapon on me? This is really strange, and it speaks strongly to the point that, you know, this isn't they're super citizens with extra rights.
Yes.
And they're better than you.
He also says if you believe that the cop is violating your rights, don't speak up at the time, sue later, but never argue with the police officer.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.